In the mortgage market? Join us for another episode of FDM Brews to learn more about trends and updates in the mortgage industry that can help you get your clients pre-approved for the home of their dreams.
Cheers, my friends.
Cheers, Cindy.
Cheers.
I'm still caffeinating. We'll shift to wine later.
Shifting wine. I'm gonna stay heavy caffeinated through the rest of the afternoon. The healthy guys are drinking water and power shakes, and I'm drinking coffee, Red Bull, and 5 Hour Energy, and Mountain Dew and sugar all in one to keep me wild.
Like overloading everything in the systems right now.
Absolutely, had to get through 2021. You got to be highly caffeinated.
That's right. 2021 was a blast, and 2022's got all of the repercussions, or all of the protections coming into place, right?
Absolutely.
Shifts in the market. We've been talking insurance trends, real estate trends, and mortgage. And, I think everyone wants to protect their investments, protect their family after that tragic incident in South Florida where a building collapsed. But now we're going to see that repercussion come through in the condo market, right? What is coming through from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
Cindy, that unfortunate situation where that building collapsed, we knew that there were going to be repercussions in how condo projects were looked at. And we knew this was coming. So recently, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have made announcements on how they're going to review projects and some of the changes that they made in the review. What we're going to share with everybody is historically, they looked at the financial stability of each project, right? That was the primary driver. Did the budget support the condo project? Was it in good financial health? With that unfortunate circumstance where the building collapsed, Fannie and Freddie now have gone back and said, you know what? Structural integrity, the soundness of the engineering are now just as important. So they made dramatic changes to that process. Now, what does that mean to us from a realtor perspective, right? You're looking at it now. I could have a great borrower, 800 credit score, a 2 ratio, putting down 80%, and I might not be able to get the loan done because the project doesn't qualify because of the structural changes. So we have a presentation we're going to share with you today called the Condo Conundrum, right? The market is getting hot for condos, and we're going to share with you why. But now it's getting a little more difficult to get them approved. So it's created some unique challenges, and that's what I want to help you navigate through today.
We're not going to have to become, construction management experts, are we?
We're not, but we're going to have to pay attention to it.
True story. All right. Well, let's get it going.
All right, Cindy, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk a little bit about the condo conundrum. As I shared with everybody, the situation that you're in, if you can see this, is that we reached a point for a lot of different reasons. Condo have become a hot form of ownership in certain markets. Certainly Florida is being one of them. Condos are very prevalent. They're in demand. And there's reasons that we're going to share with you that market is picking up momentum. At the same time, because of what we experienced in Southern Florida, it's getting a little more difficult to get these things approved. So that's what we want to share with you. How are we going to get through the condo conundrum? Nitish?
Thanks, Brett. You mentioned that condos, for a lot of reasons, they've been very popular recently. One being the fact that in the last 2 years since COVID started, we've seen the way the market has changed. We've seen the way real estate prices have started to go up. And affordability has been a huge reason for condos to be popular. Lifestyle choice. One of the things that's changed is that millennials are starting to get into the market, and condos have been popular among them. And then also baby boomers are starting to right size. Their kids are out of the house. It's just the husband and wife left, and they don't need a big 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house anymore. They are very comfortable in a condo, and they're making that change. And also, due to COVID, businesses have changed the way the work environment looks. Now, folks are working from home. Much more companies are making remote work permanent. And what that means for homeowners is that, well, they can work from anywhere. So why work in New England where it's -10 degrees and snowing when you can be in Florida working by the beach and you're comfortable, right? So folks are buying second homes in Florida, and they're living comfortably and working comfortably from an area where they didn't used to be able to work permanently.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the market having bookends, Cindy, and here's what's happening, right? So when I mean bookends, first, as Natisha shared with you, have baby boomers. Now, baby boomers were the largest segment of the population, and they're going into the right sizing phase. I'm one of them, right? My 3 daughters are all out of the house. We said, wait a minute, we want to make a lifestyle change and right size to something that's more appropriate for us. So you have the second largest population boom going into the right sizing phase. Then the largest population, which has replaced baby boomers, is the millennials, and they're coming in. Now, it was delayed, right? But they're coming into the home buying process, and affordability is an important factor for them. So condos met that need. Now, when you add the hybrid work revolution, where now you don't have to go into the office, and that's a fundamental change that we had shared in one of our other meetings, that people that used to be a second home market, they're no longer second home markets. People are moving there because they can work from there. So those have created some market momentum in the condo market, which is why these changes now are going to make it a little more challenging. We can get through those, but we need to be aware of them as we go through the process.
Yeah, and historically, what we've looked at as far as condo reviews have been financially driven, right? The financial stability of that condo association. So, we were looking at the percentage of units which are owned by investors. What percentage is owned by a single owner? Who is delinquent? What portion of the condos? The condo owners are delinquent, and then is there commercial or non-residential space, and of course rental management on site in the condo complex. And everything here again was financially driven. It was the stability that we were looking at financially, and one of the things and Brett and I discussed this earlier regarding a single owner, right? If a single owner owns 15% of the condo units in one complex, and something were to happen where he or she stops making payments on it, then that becomes an issue. Whether it's mortgage payments, whether it's condo fees that are not being paid, it becomes an issue, and that can impact the entire condo association.
And, historically, it's been financially driven, right? Was the financial stability of the project in place? If that was in place, and Fannie, Freddie, and FHA were perfectly comfortable with that. So that had been the focus, and your lender partners and your realtors are aware of it. You knew how to get through that process and how that approval would work. But with the unfortunate occurrence in 21, now we have some other layers of risk management that come into play as we move forward.
So, due to the unfortunate collapse of the towers, the Champlain Tower South, we've started. Well, the industry as a whole has started to re-examine the policies, and whereas it was financially driven before, now the industry is starting to look at the structural integrity as well of these buildings. Maintenance, special assessments, reserves, they're all being reviewed much more closely. What that means is the condo questionnaires that we had previously are changing, whereas the questions all related to financial items, now they're asking brand new questions. And it's been a little bit frustrating for the industry, whether it's lenders, real estate agents, appraisers are being impacted, everybody in the industry, and of course buyers and sellers, because it's changed the entire process, and it's changed fairly quickly. But what we have to keep in mind is the upside to all this is that safety is now being looked at, and we are putting our buyers in a much safer property, essentially.
Absolutely. One of the things that happened, and Jack is going to share with you, is that there's always unintended consequences and things, right? When COVID first hit, they passed the CARES Act into law, and the CARES Act had some unique provisions that was designed to protect homeowners, but it also had some unintended consequences, like certain things do, as Jack's going to share with you.
Right. So when millions of people stop making their mortgage payments, a lot of those people own condos, and they stop paying their HOA fee. And when that happens, that obviously impacts the association budgets, which impacts costs to make regular repairs and maintenance. which, could lead to things like now we have a condo that we can no longer lend on because something's wrong with the roof, because there was a 3-month period in 2020 where people weren't making HOA payments, et cetera. Not saying that's the reason why those towers collapsed. There's probably more to the story, but it's one of the things that could have led to something like that on a smaller scale, perhaps.
One of the things that focuses here, we've always worried about delinquencies, right? What percentage of owners were delinquent in their HOA fees? The reason it's become more pressing, as Jack just shared with you, right? It negatively impacts the reserves. Now, reserves are being looked at with greater scrutiny because that's what you're using to do repairs when required, right? So those have now become a flashpoint saying, okay, you know what? People aren't paying. Okay, that was always a challenge, but now people aren't paying, and it's really impacting the reserves, which if the condo has deferred maintenance or it has special assessments to correct something, does the entity have the reserves to cover that? So that's the unintended consequences. People didn't make the mortgage payment. They didn't make their HOA payments. Then the reserves got hammered and the delinquency went up, and it created problems for us. So that's led to some new condo guidelines.
Exactly. And we've got those for FHA and Fannie Mae already. And Freddie Mac's going to be out soon. What we have now from Fannie Mae and FHA might be expanded upon. So, extra scrutiny on deferred maintenance, special assessments, structural integrity, and reserves, and also a review of the association budget and possible review of the minutes might be required.
This is where it gets tricky, Cindy, and this is where agents need to be on high alert, right? Because as Natisha shared and Jack had shared, we'd only looked at the financial aspect of it, right? Now, when you look at this, the deferred maintenance, special assessment, structural integrity are under intense review. In the questionnaire, there are questions specifically towards these things. In addition to this, they're asking if the project has been cited by local ordinance or inspectors on any issues. So what does that mean? Now, appraisers have to give us more data, right? There are questions that appraisers are asked, and honestly, a lot of them don't know how to answer it, right? They don't know if they're if they know enough information. They don't know where to get the information. So our first issue is, and we're dealing with them now because we do a lot of condo business. Appraisers are coming back to us and say, we can't answer this question. We don't know where to get the data. So they're learning because this is so new. We're talking about this was issued last month, right? So they're trying to figure out where do they get the data, and then do they have the expertise to answer the question, and do they want to answer the question, right? So you have appraisal challenges with new data, where to get it, and do they want to answer the question? Now, the other thing that we found out, because it puts them at liability, and we have 2 active loans right now where the homeowners association is refusing to answer the questions asked. And it has to do with deferred maintenance and if their reserves meet the requirements. So the other thing that happens, right, the best practices with Fannie and Freddie are telling lenders, you need to look at the minutes of the homeowners association. Well, the homeowners association go, we're not going to share with you our minutes. Well, why do we want to see the minutes? Are they having dialogue about deferred maintenance? Are they having dialogue about a structural failure within the condo project, right? Then normally those things have only been shared within the homeowners, not public. So we're already getting pushback on these things. So these dynamics are starting to impact the market, and it's just starting. So you're going to see more of that. Like I said, we have 2 of them right now. The homeowners association, I've been dealing with them personally. They're coming back and saying, we're not answering these. I'm like, well, then the people can't buy there. And they're like, we don't care. We're not prepared. We sent you the information. You answer the questions, which we can't do. So this slide here is where it's going to get a little bit dicey as people navigate on how they're going to handle this in the future.
Is there going to be a special, like a central database that the mortgage industry is pulling from to go, okay, high risk building, low risk?
That's a great question, Cindy, because they've always had what they call condo approval, like FHA, Fannie, Freddie would do a condo approval. We would go to the website, and if the condo project's approved. Now, here's what's interesting. Even if the condo project is approved, we still now need to go get these questionnaires completed because we want to know what's happening with the assessments and the ordinances or inspection failures or homeownership minutes. So right now, no, there was, but even the ones that are quote Fannie approved or FHA approved still have to get the questionnaire done. So Jack's going to share with you about special assessments. Now, special assessments are important, right? Because if financially they could handle it before, it wasn't an issue. A special assessment is when I'm hitting all my homeowners in the condo. I have a condo at the beach. we have a special assessment. There's something that needs to be repaired. They're charging all of us a prorated share of that special assessment. Well, now, as Jack's going to share with you, they want to know why. Is it for painting, or is it something that your parking garage is falling, Jack?
Right. So if a special assessment in the past, like Brett said, if the borrower could afford it, it's no problem. But now we want to know what it's for, and why, if it were for a structural issue or a safety issue, why couldn't the condo association afford to pay that out of their own funds, because if they're having a problem with it now, they're going to have a problem with it down the line. But of course, we still have that requirement, making sure the special assessment is something the borrower can fit into their DTI, but now we got to be on top of the reason why. We got to get answers to these questions. What is the amount? What is the reason, et cetera?
Now, what's really important, this is a hidden pitfall in this one, Cindy, that I think agents need to be prepared for, and that's the last bullet point. If the special assessment is to fund the safety and soundness, structural integrity, or have the ability to live in the property, the repairs must be completed before you go to settlement. So in other words, we do this and we get the questionnaire and it comes back and says, you know what, the underlying structure for the parking garage, and it's the buildings on top of that is creating a structural issue. We might have to delay settlement, say, okay, that's great, but the homeowner association said that this is happening. This is what the special assessment is for. It needs to be completed before you go to settlement, right? So once again, your bar could be perfect, and we find this out, and you're going to have to delay the settlement, which is why we're going to suggest to our agents that we change some of our best practice on how we do that. Deferred maintenance. This is another big issue, kind of like the special assessment, right? There are areas of deferred maintenance, and deferred maintenance can be a challenge as well. I mean, if you want to share a little bit about that.
Sure. So just like the assessments assess with deferred maintenance, it's basically making sure that the financials of the association and any special assessments and so forth that have been collected are sufficient enough to complete those repairs and to complete any of the maintenance that's been put off for a while due to what Jack was stated, CARES Act with COVID and so forth. But the main important thing to understand in this is that regardless of what comes up, whether it's in the questionnaire or if it's an outside agency, authority saying that there are repairs that need to be completed, what we have to find out now is exactly what were the issues? What are the repairs? Have the repairs been completed and inspected and passed? Do we need an engineering report to see this? It's almost like the same thing that we run into a home, single family home. If we had a sinkhole issue, where we have to find out, has the sinkhole been filled? Is the engineer, signed off on it? Has it passed the inspections? So when you have these condos that are now coming up with all these issues due to the tower falling in South Florida, it's now an additional step, an additional process that adds more time into the entire financing, timeline. So we just have to make sure that these repairs that are coming either out of the questionnaire or from an outside agency, a source that has put a mandate on the association to make these repairs, have been completed before we can even consider going to closing.
Now, what's here, it's important to understand, right? Just like the assessment, depending on what it is, if it was structural or safety and soundness, you can't do it until the repairs are done. Same thing here. If the questionnaire cites significant deferred maintenance, you cannot close on the loan until it is done. Right. So if the questionnaire comes back and it says there's significant deferred maintenance, you can't close until it's finished. The next thing, Cindy, if a local authority has flagged it in order to make repairs, again, and that's in the questionnaire. But if that comes back and they've been flagged to do that, then once again, regardless of the credit quality of the borrower or what the appraisal says, if it comes back and says the authorities ordered it to do that, you cannot close the loan until those repairs are made. So to Javier's point, right, if some of these things come up, you may see the project get delayed because a lot of times, and we're going to suggest you do something different, but when it comes in later in the process and we find this out, everybody's stuck in the process. So it's important to understand that. So right now, as Javier's going to share with you, we're just trying to figure it all out.
So as we go and we start financing more and more condos, we're going to start seeing some changes possibly to continue within the questionnaire. Right now, we're asking basic questions from what we've seen, an example of the collapse, what may have caused that collapse. Could that have been avoided? are there things that we need to take a look at now and moving forward that may impact the future availability of us financing a project and the safety of the borrower? Appraisers are still trying to understand not only the changes that are happening now, but like Brett mentioned, where do they get this information? Is the information that they get reliable? Is it an approved source? Can they answer the questions? Do they have the knowledge or the expertise or the experience to be able to answer that question? Because at the end of the day, they could be liable for those responses. Associations are also now going through a bit of growing pains with these new regulations as well, because they are used to only providing certain set answers from previous years and previous questionnaires. They don't want, like Brett mentioned, to go through the minutes where that question is not on the questionnaire, but they're having these conversations about structural integrity, deferred maintenance, special assessments, increasing, condo association fee to cover some of these things because their reserves are issues. And with all these changes, and people are, trying to figure out what they can do to answer these questions in the best, possible way, and where to get the information. We have to also understand that this is just the beginning. It's not something the end all be all. There may be additional questions, and we're going to have to work together to figure this out. So it's the responsibility of, all of us to help the borrowers and make them understand that, yes, condos are a great idea, but we need to work together as a team to figure out what's the best avenue to get the information needed and to make sure that they're protected and the lenders are protected as well.
This is where we're going to run into some of the major challenges, Cindy, and it's three things that are happening.
I think Brett just froze.
Yeah, I think Brett froze.
Let's give Brett some time. I think the coffee's kicking in. He might have a system shock. He's resetting. He's rebooting.
Reboot. Gentlemen, I just like, the biggest thing that's hitting me is if you've got an individual real estate agent and you're trying to keep up with all of this, how do you keep things moving? Like, how do you keep up with it? And where's that go-to resource? So besides Brett, the coffee kicked back in.
Yeah, the coffee kicked back in. I'm in. So it didn't like what I was saying. So just shut me off. Right. So like my wife, she just ignores me when I'm talking to her. So it's good. I've been married for 31 years. So, the associations where you're going to have the problems, right? When you looked at the tower collapse, right, they started talking about the myriad of lawsuits. Who's going to be held responsible for that, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum. So now homeowners associations are supposed to ask these questions, and a lot of them are kicking back and going, we don't want the liability of answering this question. In addition to that, if we're being real, a lot of these surveys are done by third-party management companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to answer the questions, right? They're making comments based on the data that they have, but what do they know? So as I shared with you, you have two loans. One of them is done by a management company. They're coming back, so we're not answering it. I'm like, well, somebody's got to answer the question because we can't do it, right? So to Javier's point, right, everyone's trying to figure that out. It's not going to get easier. I wish it would, right? But it's not, because obviously it's a pressing issue. So as people trying to figure out what is happening, how do we operate in a way that creates best practices where we can work together as partners to get the loan done, get our clients to buy the right home. To Tish said, you can't fix it, feature it. They're going to buy a safer home, right? But how do we make that process a little more fluid? And what do we do to change our best practices to ensure success?
And Cindy, you asked a great question, and that is exactly the discussion we've been having, because as partners, we're trying to figure out with everyone involved, because it is impacting everyone involved, how do you make it easier? And so for the agents, some of the things that we've been doing, because, of course, as lenders, we're dealing with the buyer's side, right? And we're lending to the buyer, but it's not just impacting buyers agents, it's impacting listing agents as well. And even with buyers, what we've been suggesting, usually on a condo approval process, the questionnaire doesn't come in until after you have the contract ratified, after we've started the loan process. We're halfway through the loan approval before we even get the condo questionnaire back. Mm-hmm. So recently, with all these changes, what we've been doing is, to the buyer's side, we've been recommending that, hey, here's your pre-approval, because when we're working on the pre-approval, they don't have a property in mind yet. It's just a price point that we're looking at. But and Jack and I, we were discussing yesterday a client who was getting pre-approved. They were getting a pre-approval, and they mentioned that they're interested in a condo. Right away, we suggested that, hey, look, here's what's going on. Here are the changes in the market. We recommend that you get a questionnaire done prior to even getting into the loan process, so that by the time we start the process, we already know, and that offer that you put in, we know that it's sound. And as far as the seller side is concerned, they're going to have the same issue, because sellers agents are going to list that property, and they have a buyer getting financed, and they're in the process, and halfway through they find out, okay, the property that they're actually listing and trying to sell, there's a saleability issue, right? So we're even recommending to sellers agents that, look, you're working with a condo, you're working with a condo owner, we recommend that before you even list that property, you get a questionnaire done, so that you know exactly what you're dealing with. And it becomes a marketing point as well, because if you've done the questionnaire up front, then hey, you can market that. And with the change, everybody knows the changes are happening, everybody's aware of it, and you can actually market and say that, hey, condo listing, and in bold letters you can say, we already know this is Fannie Freddie approved, questionnaire already completed. So like Brett was saying, if you can't fix it, feature it. If you know these things are happening, figure out how to work around it.
I got to just say that's a brilliant marketing idea for your seller's agent, just to go ahead and get the pre-approval. Like let's make everything easy on the homeowner that's selling, on the buyer that's coming in. So yeah, that's a piece of gold. I want to make sure people catch that.
And it's a great, like Natesh was saying, it's a great marketing, and you as well as a great marketing. If you guys check with your local board, seeing if you can actually put condo approval already accepted within the realtor remarks, that's going to make the process a lot more easier. When you have multiple condos out there, and you have agents that are working with people that are, looking to buy condos, and you look at all these listings that are available, and you see highlighted in bold, big letters, forget the beautiful view. It's condo approval has been done. The question is, you're going to have all the agents rushing to show that property. So it makes
Florida, everything's got a view.
Yeah, forget the great living room, hardwood floors, beautiful view, waterfront property. Just put condo approval process completed. Condo is good.
And hey, it's a great way for sellers agents to get, with a condo, it's not one unit. It's not a single family home that you're dealing with. You have an entire complex full of homeowners, and you can market it. You do that condo approval for one individual in that complex. That condo approval impacts everybody in that complex. So anybody else who's interested in selling their property, hey, look, here's what I've done, and this is already approved. If you're interested in selling your property, here's what I have for you. And you already have the job done. And the marketing aspect of it is beautiful.
That's fantastic.
Right.
I love it.
The biggest pushback you get, Cindy, and I think it's a foolish pushback, is because a lot of these now are done by third-party services. It might be $200 to $300 to get that done. That to me is an investment well made, right? We talk about it all the time. If you can't fix it, feature it. First off, if I'm talking to somebody for a listing, I'm a condo expert, and I'm raising my level of professionalism. I'm laying out to my seller, this is the investment we're going to make, and here's why. To Javier's point, please, we're going to put out there that this is a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac approved condo. And you can sell this property. I'm going to increase your opportunities. The second thing, right, is for a buyer agent, right? You want a pre-approval. You know what? I'm making sure that you're going to buy the same property, right? I don't want to take the risk. Let's make sure before you put an offer on this property, and yes, before you spend $700 for an appraisal, let's spend $300 to get the condo approval to make sure that it's valid before you do that, because the money's being spent at some point in time. But you know what? Before you make an offer in, I want to make sure that this property is structurally sound for you, and I'll make sure I'm taking the right steps to protect your family, right? Either way, I've raised my level of professionalism and set myself apart. It's best to do it early, right? Because other people will figure out, but let's get those things and build those into our process today that set us apart so we can capture that more market why it's kind of dislocated, right? Dislocation markets create opportunity, right? So the opportunity, though, is to raise your level of professionalism, change your best practices, articulate those best practices to marketplace, and win, right? Dislocations create an opportunity to win if you're willing to change your practices just a little bit to make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, gentlemen, I think let's wrap today's show up. We're hitting the 30-minute mark. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And we hope you found a lot of value in this presentation and a little gold nugget from Nitesh there. So I just like to say thank you, gentlemen, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for FDM Brews. Our team is here to answer your questions. Just call 239-359-6590 or email us at dfry@fdmhome.com.